Hi, everybody. Welcome to Talk Live this evening. We'll go ahead and get started in a few minutes. Feel free to drop where you're joining us from in the chat. We'd love to hear from where you're at. Caroline, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. Feel free to drop where you're from in the chat. Welcome to Tenant Talk Live. And yes, just make sure to stay on mute. If you're able to, make sure to stay on mute so that we're able to speak. But yes, feel free to drop in the chat where you're joining us from. We'd love to see where folks are joining us from. We'll get started in about 3 minutes or so. Thanks everybody who's joined so far. We have Mahala Baker from Enterprise Community Partners. Welcome, welcome.
Oh, Jesus.
Awesome. We have AJ joining us from Wisconsin, Sam joining us from Nebraska. Welcome. We have Pamela joining us from New Jersey. Beck joining us from California. Welcome back, Beck. Claudia from Michigan. Hello again. Excuse me. We'll get started in just a minute, folks. We have V from Missouri. Welcome, V. And again, if you're just joining us, folks, please make sure to stay muted unless you're speaking. Awesome, awesome. We have Christopher joining us from Florida. Welcome in, Christopher. All right, we have Matt Brady from Denver. Welcome, Matt. Zachary from Michigan. Welcome, welcome. It looks like the waiting room is starting to slow down, so I'll go ahead and get us started for today. Again, thank you so much, everyone, for joining Tenant Talk Live today. My name is Sid Betancourt, and I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the project manager for the Inclusive Community Engagement at NLHC. And for anybody who might be new or might need a refresher, you're currently joining Tenant Talk Live, where we provide opportunities for residents and tenants to connect with NLHC and one another and share best practices, and also to just learn how to influence federal housing policies and lead in your community. And for folks who might not be aware, this meeting is being recorded and it'll be uploaded to YouTube afterwards, and we'll make sure to share that link with you all afterwards. Today's guest, Ashia Wilson, is joining us from the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness, also known as MCEA. Make sure to mute yourself, folks, unless you're speaking, please. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. So again, Ashia Wilson will be joining us from the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness, and I'll welcome her on in a minute. But before I pass it over, I will be going over just a brief announcements for you all. So I'll begin by sharing our community agreements on the screen so that you all can see them. Awesome, it should be on the screen now. Trying to make it bigger so that you can see it there. But again, we put these together at the beginning of the year. The platinum rule: treat others the way they want to be treated. In other words, please consider how others want to be treated and how that might differ from how you want to be treated. Mute your mic except when speaking. Listen with an open mind and empathy. Take up space and give space to others. Oh, I'll have to fix that because there's a grammatical error there. And then again, just a reminder that Tenant Talk Live is recorded and shared online for any folks that aren't aware. But if you have any feedback or any other our agreements you want to add to that, please feel free to email me your thoughts. And then this is a reminder that if you're signed up for NLHC emails, you should be receiving an email this Friday called The Connection. The e-blast will contain all recap materials, so all of the recordings, the chat, the links shared in the chat from all NLHC calls this week, including this one. So just make sure to keep an eye out for that email called The Connection on Friday, March 8th. We'll share a link in the chat for you to sign up for those emails, but you can also view last month's recap materials in a link that we'll share in the chat. And we're also close to ending out the first quarter of the year, which went by pretty fast, I think a lot faster than most of us expected. But I would love to hear just some of your thoughts on how Tenant Talk Live is going so far this year, but also just to get your ideas on what you would like to see for the latter half of the year, so from June to December in terms of topics. So we'll be providing a link to a survey that you can fill out so that you can give us some of the ideas that you'd like to see talked about during Tenant Talk Live. And then lastly, as always, just some logistics. Please make sure to use the chat for any questions that you might have that might come out through the webinar. We'll try to keep track of them the best that we can. And of course, we try to keep this as much of an open forum as we can, but we just ask that you stay muted if you're not speaking or asking a question. But again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. So I will now pass it over to Ashia Wilson, who's the Manager of Authentic Engagement at the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. And Ashia, take it away.
Thank you, Sydney. So as Sydney mentioned, I'm Ashia Wilson. I am the Manager of Authentic Engagement with the Michigan Coalition Against Homelessness. I'll give you a little background about me before we get started. Prior to coming to MICA, I was a program coordinator for a nonprofit here in Lansing, Michigan by the name of Northwest Initiative, and we provided wraparound services for people with lived experience of the criminal justice system. I was also a community engagement specialist for another nonprofit by the name of Nation Outside, and we were all persons affected by the criminal justice system. And what we did was we provided policy reform to address different barriers for those affected by the criminal justice system in order to help people be reacclimated into society. I am also a person with lived experience of homelessness. And I just am a person who has been impacted by different levels of the justice system outside of homelessness, outside of the criminal justice system and things like that. So now that I am moving into stability, I have moved into stability. Now I'm engaging in the work of advocacy and things of that nature. So I come before everyone today to discuss the importance of bridging the gap between community and different agencies. So first, I want to touch on the importance of housing justice advocacy work, like throughout the years. As we know, it's been crucial in upholding the rights of individuals and families to secure stable and secure, affordable, and decent housing. This work involves fighting against, housing discrimination, promoting different policies for affordable housing, and also providing legal aid to those who are facing unlawful evictions. And also advocacy efforts that have also helped us raise awareness about the systemic issues that contribute to housing crisis. This also includes influencing policy changes and also ensuring that housing remains at the forefront of, different social justice conversations. This work is continued and it's also ongoing, and it continues to be at the utmost importance in our current economic climate, where there's different housing instability issues being raised. Also, there has been significant victories that have been achieved by housing advocates, which have taken place like over the years. This has played an instrumental role in shaping the landscape of housing policy and legislation. Different housing advocates have included a diverse array of organizations and different people, which have been at the forefront of lobbying for different changes that protect the rights of tenants, individuals, and also promoting the availability and affordable housing. So one of the major victories that has been successful for lobbyists for laws that prevent unfair evictions has been different safeguards for tenants, ensuring that people are not just removed from their homes. Advocates have also fought for the rights of tenants in court, and some of them have been successful and won legal battles that have set important marks for tenants. Also, there has been considerable strides in raising like public awareness and also like housing inequality. And so by shining light on this issue, like we have been able to raise additional like public support and drive the allocation of increased resources towards like affordable housing initiatives. We also have been successful in like promoting the construction and preservation of affordable housing. I know that personally me, as someone I've been housed about 10 months now, but prior to this, I know that with my experience of looking for housing, there's a major lack in affordable housing, affordable, clean, and livable housing. Throughout my experience of searching for housing, like I was able to find a lot of ran down places, but to find things that were affordable and clean and just livable for my son and myself, it was very hard and the fight was extensive. And I know that there are so many others who are faced with this everyday thing. And I also know that a lot of people are unhappy within their housing based on these issues. Also, advocates have also been like successful in promoting pushing for different policies and stuff that require a certain percentage of new housing developments to be designated to affordable housing, and also like policies that prevent the gentrification of neighborhoods and displacement of residents. So like despite these victories, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done. Next, we'll talk about the high need of community involvement in housing justice efforts. I think that, well, from my personal experience, I see a lot of people who are personally affected, who are the main activists. And I think that people who are affected by it firsthand, like there needs to be bridging of gaps between agencies and those who are affected. I do notice that the people that are closest to the issues are going to be the ones who have a lot of the answers that people are looking for. Myself personally, when I was unhoused and going through my instability in housing, like when you're in that lifestyle, you feel as though the world is kind of going on without you and it's going on around you and you're just alone in that. And I had no idea about the meetings that would be held and
Sorry, Asia, so sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you. I know it's like I cut you off like at such
no, you're fine.
an engaging experience, but I know we have someone joining us on the phone, so we can't see them, but whoever's joining by the phone, if you can just stay muted so that we can hear our guests, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cindy. So as I was saying, like when you're in the midst of homelessness and housing instability, you feel as though you're the only person going through this, and you don't really know the meetings that's had. You don't really know the extent of the advocacy, the pushing and the fighting for, homelessness and the different service providers. And so it's important to, be mindful of those that have gone through that, and to kind of tie those loose ends with those people and with that population of people. I know that myself, um, I first can speak to the things that don't work in the system, as I'm sure every other person with lived experience of homelessness can. Um, Also, too, I want to shine some light on the fact that people with lived experience of homelessness, or people who are currently homeless, there may be a stigma against that population of people, but also too, when you're in that lifestyle, there is also a mistrust that that population has for people in agencies and organizations. Um, and I feel like the more people who can do street outreach, the more people who can get out there and get to know um, those who are behind those stories, you build a trust and you build rapport for both sides of the fence. Um, and that's pretty much the equation for the changes that we need to see made within the system. We do have a system that's broken. We do have a system that's going to continue to be broken, and it needs to be fixed. And really, the only way to fix it is to go into those places, those low places and spaces, um, and speak to those people and interact with those people and be inviting, you know, towards our tables that we are seated at, with those people, and not only just asking them to come in, but also sharing power with these people when they enter the room, and also knowing that when they do enter the room, they won't be as polished as we would like to see. They won't understand some of the meeting agenda or the Robert's Rule of Order, or different language that's going on in the meeting, or how to accept a calendar invite, different things like that. But just because they are unable to be knowledgeable of those things, that doesn't mean that their voice is any less important, and that they shouldn't be heard. So with having people who are affected by lived experience of homelessness, you have to keep in mind that people are affected in different ways, and people's experiences, everybody's going to have a different experience to share. And so you want to be mindful of that. And you have to be open to hearing the different, diversified stories that people come to those spaces with. People are affected differently based on their ages, their backgrounds, their race, their socioeconomic status, just different things. Another thing that I would love to see people keep in mind is that when you think about people with lived experience of homelessness, or people who are still in that lifestyle, not everyone is homeless due to the fact that they're irresponsible, or they don't pay their bills, or they make bad decisions. I've met multiple high school and college teachers that are near retirement, who have ended up homeless because they were laid off and just never called back to a job, and they just have, found their way into the streets. And so you never know how people are affected and the reasons why they're left to be homeless. Myself personally, when I was homeless, I was working 2 jobs and I was in school full time. And my homelessness was not impacted by bad choices, or that I didn't know how to pay bills, or wasn't responsible, or had never had a place, so it's a lot of things to keep in mind. Also, too, I think that people need to take into account, there is a major trauma that comes with people who are recently housed. Housing is a major issue But once you're housed, there's still a lot of trauma that comes after that. There's a lot of trauma while you are unhoused, and there's also a lot of trauma that comes once you are housed. And you're really stuck in survival mode after the fact. I know that I've spoken with people who are housed and have been housed for a few years now, and they are receiving like the MISHDA voucher or, Section 8. And every time they see something coming into the mailbox, there's this trauma that's relived. Am I going to homelessness? Every time, am I going to go back to homelessness? Is this the letters that's going to break my stability? What am I going to do? So there's a lot of trauma that comes with being unhoused and just the lifestyle. Another aspect of that too, and I'm going to speak from personal experience. When I was unhoused, there was a lot of on-the-go food that I had to eat. So once I became housed, part of my trauma was my health was affected by that lifestyle. I was at risk of diabetes, which was something that I had never experienced before. My blood work was irregular. It was just a lot of different things. So there's a lot of that comes with being homeless. And so I had to work through the trauma of being housed and then also trying to figure out how to live a healthy lifestyle after that. So as I mentioned, community involvement also fosters like a sense of empowerment among like people who are otherwise feel like marginalized or overlooked or silenced. So by giving these people a say in housing and justice efforts, they regain like a sense of control and a sense of being connected and a sense of community. And there was a quote that I once heard that I have taken that I can relate to. It says, when you feel like you're a part of a community, then you treat that community better. And so by welcoming, people with lived experience or people who are, as I mentioned, marginalized, we give them a sense of belonging and a voice. So it's not just beneficial, it's necessary for the success and the effectiveness of housing and justice efforts and advocacy, and also our different agencies and organizations. And then also too, when people in the community are seeing different agencies and things like that, going back into the community and working with people who are closest to them, that's a level of respect and a trust that's built and rapport that's built throughout the community for that agency. So, and I got a few more things and then I'm gonna wrap this up. So I know that, like, as I mentioned, the current system that we have and that we've had for so many years, it doesn't work and it isn't working. And we need, more people to accept that fact and accept the fact that we need this system rebuilt. And like, it's not just going to happen on its own. We have to like take it by force. And that starts with bridging the gap within the community and allowing those in the community to come have a seat right next to us, have a seat at the table, ask for feedback when we're making policies and making informed decisions, and not just asking for that feedback, but also letting it be incorporated into those informed decisions so that people are seeing the results of them speaking. A lot of people don't feel as if, they may feel as if, oh, if I speak up, then what is it really going to do? But if people are seeing, okay, I remember sitting at this meeting, I remember writing this letter, I remember making this phone call, and now these policies are rolling out. And this is the thing that I mentioned, and they're putting this into place. That's major. That's another sense of empowerment that makes people feel as though they're accepted and they're heard. And as I mentioned, the easiest way to solve the problem is to go back and speak to those who are closest to the problem. And also, we have to keep in mind when we're in these rooms and at these tables and stuff like that, that those in the community are just as important as our loved ones, our mother, our sister, our brother. How would we want somebody to impact the lives of those who mean so much to us? Thank you, Sydney.
Of course, and thank you, Aisha, for sharing your story and also just like giving really helpful feedback for agencies on how to like engage with people with lived experience. A lot of what you said like really touched me, and I just like you got a lot of hearts from folks attending the call and a lot of love in the chat as well. So I kind of want to uplift some of those comments as well. I think Mahala earlier was talking when you were talking about like the trauma cycle, just saying that it was a great point and that there is like, you know, a trauma cycle that's associated with being housed that can be both, you know, physically and mentally challenging. And you know, it's a lot. Like I think, you know, obviously we want to engage a lot of folks who have like that lived experience in this work, but a lot of the times we want to do it in a way that's not traumatizing to them. So I would be interested in kind of hearing your insight on that and how like the system or agencies can work in a way that's not re-traumatizing to folks.
You know what? And Sydney, I honestly was not paying attention to the chat.
That's what you got me for.
And I'm seeing a lot of that now. To Jay Mohawk, yeah, I know that here in Michigan, we are working on some time where that involves like the look back period for landlords. We would like for people not to be able to look back more than 3 years. I personally feel as though if you are asking me, am I going to be a good tenant? What does 10 years ago have to do with who I am today? There's a lot of bad decisions that I made as a person and as a young person 10 years ago or 20 years ago that don't apply to who I am today. And not only that, but if you want to know who I am now, why are you asking me about the past? You know? And so, yeah, there's something that we're currently working on right now here in Michigan. It's in our Renters Bill of Rights. And that's a package that will be working on that. And also we're working on people who are turned away based on their background check. We would like to see people get their, you know, their application fees given back to them. Different things like that to keep more so, to lean in more so to protecting the renter and the tenant, you know, versus the landlords. And not to say anything about the landlords, but for so long, the tenants have been misused and abused based on application fees, based on look back period, just a lot of different things. And also part of that package, we're trying to tie in to where landlords can, like there will be a bank that landlords can draw from. We say if you give this high risk tenant a chance and they don't pay their rent, they mess up their property, then you can come draw off of this trust. And so we're trying to work with the landlords and also work to push a package to cover the tenants.
That sounds really good too. I think Jennifer also mentioned like federal, now that I'm looking back at it too, just like federal level of limiting of look back periods. I'm not sure if there's like a specific group working on that, Jennifer. I'll have to get back to you on that, and I can include it in the recap too if I can get an answer in time for it, but I'm not sure at this moment. But if there's anyone else on the call that knows, feel free to answer in the chat. Let's see who else. I think there was someone else too that was also giving you just some kudos. Mae Wilson, just saying that what you're saying is super important. Yeah, thank you for being here today. You're also getting a lot of other kudos in the chat. But I did want to circle back to the question about trauma and how we can like do this work without re-traumatizing folks.
Honestly, I think that HMIS is important. And if people are unfamiliar with that, HMIS is a homeless management information system where agencies input the data on the people in which they're helping. And so this person doesn't have to continually tell their story. Also too, I personally feel like there needs to be some type of support person who's in these shelters who is, and that may not be feasible because I know that manpower is limited and, you know, people just may not have staff time or funding to do that. And I think that it would be really important to bring in more people with lived experience to work in different agencies and in these different positions. Not to say that nobody carries empathy, but a lot of empathy and a lot of empathetic people are going to be your people with lived experience. There's a level of empathy that is carried by a person that's been personally affected by that. Also too, I know that we have different intake questions and we have to conduct like the SPDAT and stuff like that. But if it is something that is like overly personal, I say, you know, I know what the system says, but we kind of steer away from being systematic and more so community and people based and empathy based and trauma informed. I would also recommend different agencies and different staff personnel being trauma informed trained, like, you know, taking part in trauma informed care training, ethical decisions, ethical, you know, backgrounds, different things like that. I feel like that would contribute. A lot of people don't really necessarily understand how these small details impact a person until you really have someone that's impacted by these systematic things, you know. I've even met some people who are like, I didn't know this was going on out there. I didn't know that this was a part of what it was like. I didn't know that until they've been in the room with people with lived experience of homelessness and have heard those stories. You know, some people, I just had a lady tell me last week, I didn't know people are out there hurting the ways that they are. And so it's important to be out into the street. And another thing that's coming back to me now, the more I interact with people who are still in homelessness, they tell me another issue is these agencies have banking hours. People have needs after 5 o'clock, you know, and they have nowhere to turn to after 5 o'clock, you know. So it's just those things that may seem small that can make or break a person in their life and what they're going through.
No, it is so true. And I know this is not applicable to everybody on this call, but that's like a huge reason why we try to hold these calls like after work hours, because we know that it might not be accessible to everyone otherwise. And I know somebody in the chat, I think it was Sam, that said that the VS I always struggle saying that, can also re-traumatize people. And yes, thank you, Lindsay. One of my colleagues dropped what that stands for in the chat, which is the Vulnerability Index Service Prioritization Decision Assistance Tool. The HMIS, like you said, is the Homeless Management Information System, which just like collects information from a lot of folks. And recently, I think from just like personal experience, I participated in the point in time count. And one of the questions that they asked, that we asked folks like on the street, had to do with really sensitive topics like around identity. I think we also asked them stuff around like domestic violence and stuff, and that stuff can be like super triggering. But the one thing that I liked about the location that I did it in was that they had like a really good prompt for the volunteers on like how to, you know, engage folks. And I feel like a lot of that probably had to be driven by folks with lived experience and probably people that had a lot of experience in this field. But yeah, like I think that kind of stuff is really important.
And you know what, honestly, Sydney, I took part in the pit count this year as well. And I also feel like that, I don't know if it's the same everywhere, but I know that the one that I took part in, I would like to see for that questionnaire to be 5 questions or less. The pit count that I took part in, there was a front and back side paper that they were just handing to people to fill out on their own. And I personally feel like you're already going into people's homes, right? Whether it be under a bridge or whether it be in their car. You're going into these spaces that are uncomfortable for them. And you want them to gather enough thought to fill out front and back side of paper. You know, when pick count should be a half sheet of paper, yes and no answers, or how long you've been in a house, which, you know, name, maybe. And there was just a lot of, I saw a lot of people not wanting to interact with that, you know, as we did run across them on the streets. I mean, it's just small things, you know, like that make a huge difference. I think that front and back of a paper is just a lot for a person that's homeless. When you're in homelessness, you really just want to figure out how to survive every single day and every single night. You don't really want to talk to people with a paper, you know? And you specifically, I know that some pay counts do go out with like gift bags and gloves and stuff like that to hand out to the homeless, but there's a lot that don't. And I think that should be a requirement in order to pick up this and absorb this data. That should be a requirement that we do help these people as we go ask for them to be counted, right?
And I'm not sure, like, we don't really do a lot of heavy advocacy around like the improvement of the pit count, but I think Community Solutions might be like one of those national organizations that like does do a lot of that advocacy if anybody's interested in engaging with them. I don't know if they do it so much now. It's been like a year or two since I've been engaged with their work, but they did a lot of cool stuff around improvement in there. And then I did want to circle back to a comment left here by Rachel Johnson. Rachel, if you want to unmute yourself, just because I haven't had a chance to fully read your comment, but I think it was in regards to the trust that Asia was mentioning earlier.
Okay, yeah, I was Asia. Hi everybody. I was just really just adding to, she said that they were creating the renters bill of rights or some tenants bill of rights package, just adding the fact that, you know, you have a hard time, these tenants are having a hard time getting up these thousands and thousands of dollars to put down the deposits. And then at the end of their lease, most of these tenants leave with the units the same way, if not better, than when they first got there. And then they're not able to get their deposits back. I've been working with a lot of tenants trying to get their deposits back. I mean, $5,000 and $6,000 and $7,000, and they don't have attorneys who are going in to help. Even legal services doesn't help with this, and so we have to figure out other ways to get these tenants back their deposits. Because what I'm learning in Miami, there's no way to do it but to go to court, and how are tenants going to go to court? They're already having a hard time, you know, in evictions. So they're going to have an even harder time trying to get back this money from these landlords. And so that was one of the things that um, I forget which state it was, but there's a state that has a particular committee that if the landlord takes your deposit or doesn't follow the law, you go before this committee. And I think that was a good, and I think that's Vermont, to be honest. It was Vermont who did that. And they have a committee that you go before, and they helped a couple of tenants that I advocated for get their security deposits back. You know, so I think that that could be something that could be incorporated in the tenants bill of rights, um, so that people can get their money back.
And you know, I really like that idea. I really like the idea of going in front of a committee. I've never seen that before. And I think that that's really helpful. I love that. I'm gonna take note of that.
Yeah, I have somebody that I could you know, refer you to, because she did get her, she got it back. So it's very important for tenants and everybody here, just learn, just walk in with a video with the landlord and really hit those different spaces with the video, because that helped her to get her deposit back. And when you're walking out through that walkout, even if the landlord doesn't do the walkthrough with you, you do it on your own. And that's going to be very important in you getting your money back.
I like that.
And my colleague just dropped a little bit of information on the Vermont security deposits too, which we'll make sure to share with everyone in the recap email.
Oh, I love that, Lindsay. Thank you.
That's what we're here for, to share information with each other. So I'm glad y'all were able to share that. I did just want to encourage folks to, feel free to share your questions in the Q&A. And if you want to come off mute, please raise your hand and we can have questions answered that way. But in the meantime, I do have some questions if nobody else has questions. But I do want to ask Ashia, I think something that I've learned about most recently is just like highlighting the strengths of like community members and people with lived experience. But that's something still very new to me, and I think would be interested in kind of learning how you do that in your work, or have you seen agencies do that when engaging with people who have lived experience?
I'm starting to see it more now, throughout agencies and organizations. It's like a major movement with involving people with lived experience. So I'm starting to see more of, more requests for people with lived experience being made. I personally, I daily, I keep in mind about my experience, and I go to places and spaces where people are showing up that I know, like anywhere they're talking housing, anywhere they're talking criminal justice reform. I actually go to the places where people are like me. And I know that's where I'll meet the people that will inform the work that I'm doing. We're currently working on a curriculum to prepare people to serve on governance bodies and boards and things like that. So to inform the work and help navigate the work that I do, I go directly to, people with lived experience of homelessness. You'll find, like me personally, I find these people at resource fairs, on the streets. I go, pass out food, things like that. And interact with them right, where they are. You got to meet people right where they are. And to let them know you don't have to approach me. The only way to approach me, or the only way to interact with me, is not in an office, or in this 9-to-5 space. No, I'm coming to you right where you are. And I want you to be comfortable interacting with me in your space. So I go directly to this, right to the source. And sometimes that may call for like dressing down. People may be intimidated when they see this person coming in a suit or casual business clothing, coming into these spaces. A lot of people lay eyes on you for the first time and they're like, oh no, here comes so and so, unless you're an organization who has a street outreach team or something like that they're used to seeing. Like, it's okay to dress down in t-shirts and sweatshirt or whatever that may look like for each individual person, to connect with people right where they are.
And that honestly, is a very good answer, because I've been thinking about that too, and how we can do that at the national level. And it's hard because we have like such a wide reach, but it's like a dream of mine for us to hopefully maybe do that, and going into the communities and engaging with people. But obviously, like at the local and maybe even at the state level, folks have a lot, like hopefully an easier time getting that access and doing like events with the community, but also doing things that the community enjoys doing as well.
And you know what? I'm seeing more stuff in the chat. I see that Pamela had a question. She asked about landlords needing to advise tenants, like which bank that your security deposit is held in. From my experience, that information should be in your lease. Like, you're supposed to be informed of that in your lease agreement. I don't know if that's just a Michigan thing. And that may vary from state to state or area to area, but I know that in Michigan, that from the experience that I've had, they're supposed to tell you that in your lease agreement where to find your security deposit. And then I see that Christopher, he mentioned tenants should, consider going to real estate school. So one thing that we want to keep in mind with that is not everyone can afford to do things like that. It would be nice to see classes taught, where tenants could attend a weekly class or a monthly session to, give them knowledge about real estate and their rights and just how everything works. Because you'd be surprised, people don't really know how these systematic things work. So it'll be nice to see that type of, class being held somewhere. Maybe, I don't even know if it could be pro bono work, or it could be community led, or it could, it's a lot of different ways to do it. It's just whatever works for each community.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And I definitely appreciate you acknowledging that too, because like you never really think about how much it's gonna cost you, not just like fiscally, but like physically, mentally, until like you're actually there and you already have like so many other things going on, just like as a person, regardless of like what your lived experience might look like. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I think Christopher also just dropped like a workforce development centers that might be able to help with that. I'm not aware of those, but if anybody like is interested in those, I just wanted to share that out loud. And yeah, we have Dr. Bambi, who is actually part of our state and tribal partner network and an NLHC board member who also formally experienced homelessness, who just dropped in the chat that they hold their real estate broker's license. I do see 2 questions that just came in. So Colin Davis, I think, asked, what kind of events do you think we could hold in our community to foster engagement from more people?
I think something like a community appreciation event would be great, just to give back into the community, to show a form of appreciation, or like a resource fair where you do have free food and free, things like that. And everyone may not have funding for that. But really just showing appreciation towards the community. And with every event, we want to also include like children, right? Because people have children. That could look like having face painting, that could look like a bounce house, or, or even a community listening session would be appreciated by people. I would look at the different events that have been held in the past, or if you know someone who does put on events, or if different organizations who do put on events, or even if you could look like throughout Facebook at different events that have been held in the past and see what has got the biggest response. It's okay to kind of piggyback off of what's been had in the past, or what's been done in the past to get a good response too. But that comes with going out into the community and shaking hands with people, saying, look, on the 17th of this month, and I'm just throwing that date out. On the 17th of this month, we'll be at so-and-so place. We'll be having raffles, giveaways, food, whatever that may look like, to give to give the community a face behind the event that's being held. I think that will be great.
Yeah. And I like that you also just mentioned like making it accessible for like families and parents. Like I think that's really important. I had like more to add there, but that comment specifically just stuck out to me because I remembered like growing up and like going to community events and church events, and like you said bouncy house, and I was like, yes, like I was always there. I had no idea what my parents were doing, but I knew I was always there if there was like face painting or anything like that, just so that folks are able to get those resources. I want to make sure I didn't miss any questions. I think there was one by Ashlyn. I don't think it was directly connected to community engagement in general, but it was an important question. Okay, so is there any policies that you are aware of that are pushing against like unfair evictions and how long they stay on someone's record. Yeah, I know the answer to that honestly will vary by locality, but if you have like any insight to share from your perspective in Michigan, we'd love to hear it.
Honestly, not that I'm aware of. It should be. And I think that is something that we need to advocate for. Because I think that an eviction to stay on someone's record for 7 to 10 years is entirely too long. Especially the different circumstances that people are evicted under. I even met a young lady who was evicted, just for different reasons, like pets, flushing the toilet. It's silly reasons, and I feel like 7 years is a very long time. 10 years is a very long time to tell a person, oh, you're a bad tenant, not every person who's evicted is a bad tenant, there are, like I said, there's multiple reasons as why someone would be evicted. There's even some people who are separating from their spouse or, just can't afford rent. And so I personally feel like there needs to be advocacy efforts in place for things of that nature. But as of right now, I don't think there is anything that anyone is working on with that.
Thanks for sharing. One thing that I did want to touch on, because I know there's like a few folks touching on this topic in the chat, but 211 programs, 311 programs, whatever it may be called in your area. I know a lot of folks often get referred to that. We also refer folks to that because that's like one of the major resources that we have. And sometimes it's just not helpful, and that's like the reality of the situation. Like they may not have like the necessary resources to actually like get somebody housed. So I'm just interested, I don't really know if I have a question here necessarily, but I think it's like important to talk about, how there's like a severe lack of resources and like what folks can do when they're like in dire need, but like there's just not enough resources there.
I agree.
Yeah.
I do have a question.
Of course, Dorothy, go ahead.
That question is, you sent us a list of dates. Now, each date will be a different topic.
For this webinar in particular?
You sent us an email with different dates.
Yeah, so every session will have a different topic.
Okay. And you mentioned 211. Unfortunately, it closes at 5 o'clock in Wilmington. And I guess that's true in many places. It really doesn't help the homeless. They still have to be on the street. And the police no longer house people the way they used to. Yeah.
Thanks for sharing, Dorothy. I don't think I see any other questions in the chat. I don't see any hands coming up, but Aisha, I'll leave it to you if you have like any last minute thoughts that you want to share with the group before we wrap up today.
Yeah, I just want to thank every single person that's on this call. Just your concern, your advocacy efforts, everything that you contribute to the lives of others. Whether you're told on a daily basis or even rarely. Like, I just want to thank you for your continued efforts. I appreciate, your commitment to showing up here on a Monday at 6 to 7 p.m. That's major. I know that a lot of times that when we use our voices, sometimes we don't feel heard. And even throughout that, like, keep speaking, keep talking, keep showing up, keep doing what you're doing. And I'm really appreciative to the feedback, to just everyone that's here. I appreciate you, Sydney, and everyone at NLIHC, and just everyone on this call. And I'll drop my email in the chat if anybody wants to reach out to me to further work with me outside of this. You're more than welcome to. And I look forward to the changes that will be made in the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Asia, and thank you so much for everyone who's joining us. We're almost at time, so I'll go ahead and just wrap up and have a few closing comments for today. And I'm sorry if we didn't get to everybody's question too. You guys are always welcome to email myself or our outreach inbox afterwards so that we can answer any additional questions. But just a reminder, our next Tenant Talk Live will be on April 1st. And no, that's not an April Fool's joke. It will actually be on April 1st, 2024. And the topic will be focused around legislative advocacy. So we'll have one of our board members from Washington State kind of talk about how their legislative session went. And just so that y'all can learn a little bit more about that process. Excuse me. And I believe Lindsay just dropped that information in the chat for you all, so you can register for the next call. And again, we'd love to hear your ideas for future topics. We're going to start planning for what the last half of the year will look like in terms of Tenant Talk Live topics. So if there's anything that you really, really want to see, now is the time to tell us. We're going to keep it open until March 1st, I believe. So through the month of March, you have a full month to fill that out. And then, as always, we're always looking for blog post authors for NLHC's On the Homefront blog on an ongoing basis. So if you have any stories that you would feel comfortable sharing or any insights that you would like to share with your experience just in housing advocacy, you're always welcome to email us at outreach@nlhc.org so that you're able to learn more about what the blog guidelines look like. And also don't forget to join our Facebook group if you have a Facebook page profile, because that's where a lot of folks connect with one another. And as always, if you have any feedback for me or have any questions or anything, please feel free to email me with any questions you might have. But yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll make sure to share everything on Friday. Have a lovely Monday, folks. Bye.